All right, so here we go. So this is Eric. Welcome to the unofficial show. A little bit of mixed talk. My friend Malin is on the line. Malin, where are you based out of? You want to say, tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm currently in Florida, but I live in Mexico City. I'm originally from Stockholm, Sweden. I've been DJing since around 2010 out. Yeah, I started this concept called Lúcido, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about later, in the last year. So that's kind of my new project.
Ah, very cool. Very cool. So so we know each other through a mutual friend, Christina Lazic, and I think you told me sometime after the fact that you met Christina when she lived in London, which I didn't realize until more recently that she had lived there up until like 2019 or so. So I guess something like
Yeah,
that.
same. We both lived there. I lived there for 10 years. That's kind of where I started DJing. And I met Christina. We were playing at the same party, and we have a lot of mutual friends. So, yeah.
Very cool. And I got to see you play not that long ago. Was that May or June when you were in New York?
Yeah, was it June?
Could have been early June or maybe it was May. I don't know.
End of May, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, no, you rocked it. I thought a little bit, I hate to judge a book by its cover. I thought you were very much more, again, going from what's on your Beatport and some original stuff, and maybe that's old and not necessarily representative of what you play. I thought you were a little more in that organic house side, but you were playing some jams and that was different. And then when I see you post some of the, vinyls and, and the other stuff that you talk about on social from the record collection is like a little more classic house. And so, yeah, all in all, good selections.
Yeah, I think that's also why I wanted to create Lucido, because I think a lot of people know me from this Burning Man organic style that I played at Scorpios, where I had a residency for 4 years.
Where's that?
Scorpios in Mykonos.
Oh, in Greece. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And that's an amazing place. Really great people to work with. I was there for 4 summers. I felt lately that, it's not really where I want to go musically. Mm-hmm. It's not where, what I played before that either. It was an opportunity that fell into my lap and it worked out really well. And I'm super grateful for the experience. But I think it kind of backfired a little bit because I, was booked for those kind of sets. That was not really something that I wanted to do. And I think if you read interviews about a lot of DJs have experienced this at some point, they get an opportunity and then, they kind of realize they want to change musically a little bit.
Pigeonholed maybe a little.
Yes, pigeonhole is the word. Exactly.
I mean, look, I'm, obviously some cool life lessons straight from the booth, and you're a full-timer and stuff, so that's all good. I think the same thing can kind of happen to actors and whatnot. They do a show that they're known for, and then it's hard to break out of that. So yeah, tell us more about the Lucido concept.
Yes, so it was kind of born out of a little bit of a frustration of this is my generalization, but in order to find good music in places like London and Mexico City, a lot of times you have to venture out a bit. Like in London, I remember I went to an amazing party last time I was there, but it was very far out. The party didn't get going until 3 a.m. It was super dark, and whereas the places that most of my friends go to, like the music is, kind of cheesy. And, I was thinking like, why isn't there any place with really quality music, that is more accessible to people? And I think it actually has started to come in the past 6 months. I've seen places like Dante's Hi-Fi in Miami, Soundbar. There's a lot of places popping up. And of course, there are places, but it wasn't the norm. Like last time I was in London, like, a lot of places are not playing cool music. So I kind of wanted to create, something for us people who appreciate better
nice
music.
Yeah, so I mean, speaking of, we've had some chats. I know you post a series where you talk about a record from the collection and you're posting stuff that's hard to find, and sourcing music that's hard to find on Discogs and whatever. And I think you and I both appreciate some of the music from the 2000s. So in our little DJ group, you had posted you have this series. I've been on a little roll lately of, recording and gigging out. So you said, oh, I'm open to a guest mix from anyone. And I was able to turn something around kind of the next day off the cuff. And I'm like, let me just kind of continue on with music that Malin and I had been talking about, which is kind of like this love of the early 2000s, like a lot of the tribal house before it got, say, a little cheesy and overdone by maybe, say, 05-ish. But there's a lot of good stuff that's out there. And then, some of these tracks you can only find if you hunt and peck on digital. And some of them are getting played. Like there's a track that's in the mix called Pixels that I hear being played a little bit lately from Andrei Pushkarev, who I follow a bit. And then I saw this other new cat, Dilby, putting in one of his charts on Beatport. And that tune is from like 01. So yeah, I mean, a little bit about me. Like I fell in love with music from that era. I have a mix CD on the shelf someplace from it was a mix CD from a club in Canada called Sona. And that was like one of my first proper clubbing nights. I could be wrong. Sona was definitely a long-running after-hours club in Montreal, and Montreal has a very, very vibrant, healthy scene. I mean, I've only been there twice. I'm not an expert in it. But Sona had a run. I think it was started by Tiga. They started in 96 and closed in 2004. And maybe, I could be wrong, but maybe Stereo exists in their place now. I'm not 100% sure, but this was like a massive club. I ended up going there Friday night and staying well into Saturday morning. Me and some friends went for New Year's Eve 2002, which back in that year, New Year's Eve night, I believe was Monday night. So we went for like a proper weekend of just going out every night and hardly even seeing daylight. I think we saw daylight the day we arrived in the afternoon, and then we saw daylight again like when we left, or maybe in the mornings coming home from the club. But it was a lot of sleeping during the day. But we went to Sona Friday night, and I was like, wow, this place is like pretty rugged. This is where like real people into nightlife go, and like, strippers hang out after work and stuff. And as a, 20 something year old, barely, or early 20s, I was like, wow. And then the Sunday night party was just even more industry night, the whole bit. And then Monday for New Year's Eve, we went to a place called Aria, which, also an after hour spot, very, well noted at the time, perhaps like a little bit more mainstream. But anyway, I liked it so much. I actually had a mix CD that they did at the time sent to me in the mail because I wanted to get that. You can find that mix CD on Discogs if you like. The name of it is called Massive. And yeah, some of the tunes on it, I actually included in your mix. I wasn't buying vinyl or DJing quite yet at that time, which was 2002. I got my first set of Technics decks that are still right there, like a good year later. And then, learning how to mix on vinyl and doing it in a way that wasn't embarrassing probably took like a good year-ish to get the beat matching and phrasing and stuff sorted, But yeah, so it was cool that the mix that I did for you fit the vibe. I did it and wasn't sure if maybe it was a little bit too energetic, but I guess you liked it. We've messaged about it, but yeah, I mean, explain how you think it fits, and then I'm happy to play some of the music and talk about some of the records because I actually have them here, and we could go from there.
Yeah, no, I really loved it. And I think also for me, I want to bring back the art of DJing. And I think nowadays there's so much focus on DJs being producers, which, some DJs are both. They're great producers and great DJs, but I discovered a lot playing out that it's not always the case. And I think that, I miss that, going to a DJ set and be like, wow, blown away by the DJing. And that's why like the art of digging, which I think in your mix was really apparent. And yeah, the style is just exactly what I like. So yeah.
Well, thank you. So yeah, I didn't play anything any later than 2010. So all the tunes are from the 2000s, let's call it. And yeah, I'm definitely of the mindset of you and kind of restoring the art of DJing. I've kind of come to the realization that some of these conversations around sync or not are almost silly at this point because digital DJing these days, in and of itself, if you're using something like Rekordbox, where you've analyzed and put a beat grid to your music, I mean, whoop-de-doo. That's like likening guitar playing to Guitar Hero. So I feel like modern digital DJing, the intention of it was great. And I feel like a lot of the veterans in the scene who've embraced DJing are using the modern tools to really do the impossible that you couldn't do with vinyl. All good there. That intention was great, maybe philosophically, but now here we are 10 years into digital DJing being around, let's call it, from the rise of, say, laptop DJing and whatnot. And things got a little bit more better and easier to do. Like, I think you and I have probably both played on CDJs where you could, in theory, loop. But my gosh, the gods of house music would have to be like totally aligned to you and your playing. If you could actually make a loop that would loop without, you know what I'm saying? Very, very hard to loop one on time. I never had that. I'm getting a little bit off on a side tangent. In the 2000s, there was this vinyl looper that apparently worked super, super well. I forget, I think Peavey, the Red Sound looper or something like that. Those were somewhat popular with the vinyl heads. But anyway, digital DJing took off with the laptop era, let's call it, where you could easily grab a loop. And I think the idea of it being able to open up creativity, beat juggle, use cue points is all good. But here we are 10 years later-ish, 15 years later, and I feel like what happened with digital DJing is it gave training wheels for a lot of non-music forward people to be decent enough to not F up. So, now you've got people who are influencer forward, marketer forward, being able to be, whatever, combined with the fact that music is now cheaper to make and easier to consume. And there's no passion, for digging, etc. But anyhow, speaking of digging, so kicking off the mix, this tune is Dido, One Step Too Far. This is, to me, a good opener. I've heard this in a club setting back in the day and ended up buying it and saw it and what have you. I'll give people a little preview. I'm going to share what's in. I should be able to share. One sec. Here we go. So here's the first track. Let me know if you can hear this on your side.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's a nice tune. I let it largely play out. Kind of, dreamy and chugging and whatnot. And again, full track list will be available, but that's kind of the gist of this tune. It's a good one. Then I kind of go along and there's a digital track that I play. This is from around 2010 by a fellow named Daniel Vigorito. I think it's on a pretty known techno label. This was a little bit more tech house at the time, but maybe not cheesy. It's still kind of tribal and very groovy. Then I get into the next. There's a little delay between when I hit pause, but then the next vinyl that I play is, to me, a great one to be about here. So there we go. Ted Patterson, Magnifique. That's about track 3 into the mix. This is a great one. I heard this out. There used to be a club in Manhattan that had a really cool Thursday night when, again, this is when Manhattan was a little bit more, full of nightlife and before Giuliani had kind of busted chops and closed everything down and, closing down Sound Factory on 46th Street. This was the second Sound Factory. They kind of used that as, oh, look what we did. We closed this drug den and this and that. And then after that, then the bottle service kind of came in and, maybe that wasn't like the best for music. That was like, VIP and, bottle service forward.
I totally agree. And I think that's also what's happening now, that it's such a tough climate for clubs, and I think that's why they don't want to take a risk on, new DJs or anyone that's playing anything alternative. And I think, yeah, that's unfortunately when we started to lose, what we love so much.
I know. But yeah, so 22nd Street in Manhattan used to have like a row of clubs, of which was Discotheque, and either on the same block or around the corner was a great spot called Centro Fly. Central Fly opened around 2000-ish and had like a 70s theme, because there was like in the early 2000s when, I don't know, maybe the Austin Powers movie came out, and that was like 70s or something. And yeah, there was like a little 70s vibe that came around, I don't know, in terms of like clothes people were wearing and wedge shoes for girls and stuff like that. But that was their whole vibe. I remember seeing Carl Cox play there for like $10 or $20 admission on a Tuesday or Thursday night at Central Fly. But anyway, yeah, I definitely heard this record Magnifique get played at the Thursday night party at Discotheque, where, you know, a lot of known DJs would show up. And
back then, like, if you heard a record, was there Shazam, or you had to know it? You would have to ask someone.
Oh yeah, there was no Shazam. But there was a healthy culture of digging, let's call it, where sure, maybe there was MySpace and LimeWire at the time, and maybe that was the beginning of the end. I don't know. But where like people didn't pay for music. I think the DJs and stuff still, you know, were buying records, of course. That was still very much alive and well. But I think a lot of consumers really, a lot of, you know, patrons who were psyched enough about the music, you know, not the touristy types, they would go to the club and be out by, I don't know, whenever it would close, but 3 or 4 a.m. with the rest of the tourist types and, you know, whatever. But the people who would show up, you know, at 6, 7, 8 a.m. to stay until the club closed, those were the people who were really in it for the music. So there used to be, pre-social media, there used to be message boards. So like you go to parties, and then people would talk about the weekend, and they would playlist what they know and share it with others and talk about the night. Like, here's the running track list that we heard, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Or people would hit up the shops. I shopped at this record store in New York called Vinyl Mania, something like that. But a little before my time, apparently the rumor was that, like, you know, again, this is just a different era. DJs now make money on gigs. It used to be flipped, where DJs would make a lot more money selling vinyl, like 10 to 15K for like a nice EP, but would only make like 1,500 a night to go DJ. Now it's very much the other way around. Maybe the productions can lead to bookings in kind of a, you know, roundabout way. But I guess, like, you know, in the 90s or something, before CDs were super prevalent, like, regular patrons into the music enough had a record player, and they would go maybe buy at the same store as the DJs would. I don't know.
And also my other question is, were there a lot of parties during the week? Because I feel like there's not anymore. Like, even in the big cities like New York and London, no one goes out on a Tuesday anymore.
Oh, I think people do. Like, here, you played at Hearsay, and I think they're doing a lot of things right. They have cool stuff for the music. That neighborhood is definitely a little bit more flashy and touristy and high end. But, you know, it's a little spot, and they'll have like Sex Troxler play on like a Tuesday. You know, that neighborhood meatpacking has always been, since the mid 2000s, very, very, very trending and a little bit like affluent. And sure, it's annoying to get into if you show up and don't want to, like, you know, buy a bottle or something like 12:30 onward, whatever. Maybe it's a little too dark for my liking, but the sound and music is definitely cool. I thought it was a cool spot for you to play. But people, yeah, spots like that, I mean, people are going out during the week for sure.
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, yes, if it's like a bank holiday, as we say in the UK. What is it called in America again? Is it called bank holiday? No, just a holiday.
Holiday, like we have Labor Day coming up.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think those days people go out, but I think in general, I see it a lot in London. In general, people don't really go out. When I moved to London 2010, people would go out on a Wednesday. It's not the same anymore.
I mean, look, I'm a little far removed. I'm a DJ dad who lives, if I have to schlep over to Brooklyn, sometimes with traffic, depending upon how far I go, like there's Ridgewood, Queens, also very close to Brooklyn. That's like a brutal drive for me. I went on a Sunday a while back. It took me nearly 2 hours to get there. So, like, yeah, I'm not necessarily in the thick of living close enough where it's, you know, a hop, skip, and a jump away to maybe do like a decent weeknight, but then, I'm in bed 15, 20 minutes later. If it was, that was the case, sure, I'd have a better like finger on the pulse of what's happening, because doing some of that would be a little bit more realistic. But when there's an easy hour and change ride home from Brooklyn, which is a little bit that much more of like a pain in the ass for me in New Jersey, yeah, it's a little tough to then also, be awake and on point for maybe work and other stuff the next day. But anyhow, so speaking of going back to the music, the next vinyl in the collection. So this is a track where you can find one of the versions. So this is by Xpress 2. What else is there to say? Legendary producers. This is AC/DC, but it's the Tribal Beach mix that can't be found anywhere. Let me give people a little taste of what that looks like. Let me cue that up here. Cool. Let me share screen again. So here we go. And then it goes on. There's this cool kind of catchy synth lead part.
Do you remember, like back from this time, how, like, when did it start to kind of go down? Was it that it became more popular? Like, I'm always very interested in understanding how musical trends work.
I mean, I think like the whole tribal drummy thing just got a little bit too predictable and overdone. But what I also remember happening around 04, 05, that was when Tool Room kind of got started. And there's a track that I remember buying way back from one of their probably first releases that I thought was cool. It was like the early days of like electro house. I think it was what it was called, that had like a quick emergence, or maybe the early part of when that had enough momentum behind it to be like a subgenre you might actually refer to as like electro house. I think around 04 to 06, that started becoming a thing. And then I don't know what happened to it by like 2010, but then there was another kind of wave of EDM, of which that was a bigger sound, but it had morphed and become maybe like a little bit more main room or something like that. But I feel like the early sound of Tool Room records was like very interesting and like electric-ish, and then there was a pivot, and then there was minimal techno that came in around 2006. I had a little musical hiatus from like 2008 to 2012 where I bought stuff here and there, but like the gigs and whatever had calmed down, and then the musical bug was bit again, say sometime around like fall 2012, and then I started producing and actually getting shit done. It was like on the job stuff and a bit of adulting that actually had me focusing more and better time management, and was actually able to complete and finish music. Whereas like in my 20s, there was like the mistake of being too perfectionist and whatever and stuff like that. But yeah, after kind of like I applied some stuff that I learned on the job and said, okay, if like I'm a digital campaign manager by day, and sure, there's a launch date that you have to hit. Maybe not every I is dotted and not every T is crossed, but like you have to hit it. So like maybe you let little things slide a little bit and you work on the 80% most meaningful, and then like, whatever, these ideal things that might be perfect to complete if there were all the time, money, and resources in the world, sure, but like you have to launch, right? So then I was like, I have to do this with my music among some other things, and like got production done, and had some releases on Nervous and stuff in the 2010s, and not going to get on a whole producer talk, but basically, yeah, and had a little music break. I didn't think there was a ton interesting coming out at the time. I was much more into the music of the early 2000s, and then sure, I bought stuff here and there, but I think when I started buying vinyl again, I think vinyl is still and always was where a lot of the interesting music was coming out. So like this kind of dub and minimal sound that I've been into, and there's still a lot of great house music coming out, but I think the most interesting stuff is always on vinyl. Tends to be on vinyl because it's harder to make, you know, if you're gonna put time and effort into a vinyl release, like it's probably gonna be a bit more better, and you know, has DJ support already, and people who dig and look for quality new releases, you know, like anyone can put a release on Beatport these days. And again, not to get on a big rant, but I feel like 2012, 2013 was maybe that perfect balance of where, sure, not everyone had to release on digital. There was a vibrant, you know, digital music buying scene that was happening at the time, but it was still managed by labels who could get you on Beatport. Like having a release on Beatport 10, 12 years ago meant more than it did now, because now any schmo can just sign up with some distributor who for a small fee will put you direct on Beatport. So there's no label A&R oversight. It's a free-for-all. But yeah.
Yeah, I love that early tech house. That was super groovy. I remember from like maybe 2012, 2013 that the Beatport tech house chart, everything started to sound very computer made. You know, I don't know if you remember. I'm not going to mention any particular labels or artists, but I remember there was a few that it was kind of like they had, you know, a template, and then they would just like whack in old samples. And I mean, the idea was good, but there was no groove, you know, no swing. And I think that's for me when I was like, shit, this is not a good development.
I know. I feel like it can be a really cool genre, but there's also a lot of nonsense and garbage. Like, I don't know, maybe tech house is one of the most popular genres that's kind of always been around. Hearing it out can be kind of cool, because a lot of times, like, the mono and big subs don't always reproduce some of the vocals and stuff that might be annoying, that you would hear more, you know, listening at home or on your consumer studio monitors, or even consumers with earbuds or whatever. But yeah, I also think this whole like Latin tech house thing is getting super cheesy and overdone. That's like trendy right now. I don't know. To me, a lot of it still says this is kind of the same. Can definitely be cool, maybe a little bit more so, you know, when you're out and having a good time. But yeah, I don't know. And then what's on the Beatport top 10? I don't. As some of us New Jersey Italian Americans say, forget about it. It's like terrible. I mean, like, there was a time when maybe I didn't play the Beatport top 10, but I respected it. Because there was something original going on. Maybe it was too mainstream or whatever. But cruising the Beatport top 10 as of late, say in the last 2 to 6 months, it's like recycled remixes. It's no one can do something original anymore. So let's revisit yesterday. And that, you know, that brings me to a good point. So this record that's on the mix, Andrea Brown, Tripping, this was a dance cover of a Jill Scott song that had nothing to do with house music, right? And they thought to make like a dance record out of it. And this was a big tune back in the day. Like, that to me is very, very imaginative creativity, remixing, covers, etc. And sure, there's always been a place where maybe like a Crystal Waters Gypsy Woman gets a modern retouch. And that's fine, to keep people to give you something to bop your head to, or to play it like a party and play something that's maybe the same song everybody likes, but not the 90s version, original version, etc. But these remix that typically wasn't the stuff that would make like a Beatport top 10. When I was buying more on Beatport, I've kind of pivoted more to Bandcamp for original purchases. But yeah, you know, they're just a little bit more mainstream in how they catalog and merchandise. But
totally. And I think also what I've always liked to play is, you know, a little bit more of a cross genre vibe. I've always hated when, you know, there's like an Afro track and everything is Afro. The typical, you know, everything is so typical. It's again like you've made a template and you've just chucked everything in. I've always liked when people, you know, there's maybe a trippy bass line and then some Latin drums, but that's the end of the Latin. You know, I don't like when it's too much of the same. I think that's kind of...
Oh my God. And this whole Latin thing, yeah, that's maybe even not Latin, Afro house thing is maybe even worse than the cheesiest of cheesy tech house. I mean, you know, and the whole thing, you know, you read about Marshall Jefferson, one of the originals of house music, and why he almost wanted to quit sometime, and maybe he did for a little bit and got back into it. But it's like the Europeans take it over. They kick out the people who started it, and like, I think that's kind of, I see this French guy, Yugal Thug, he goes by. He almost looks like a cliche of everything that's cheesy about being like a white guy that wants to be a person of color personified to the nth degree. And then there was something where he was talking about doing like a A&R listening thing for his music, and he's talking about music that's like unique and original, but what he's doing is like not even unique and original. It's like so trite lyrics, cheesy. I don't know, so cheesy. It's like whatever, young kids, I guess, fine, yeah. But like I don't know. That's another one. Maybe don't get me started. Leave it at that. It can be cool and sparse elements. I think the way that you and I might incorporate some of that into a set, but when it's so overdone, it's just like,
yeah. Yeah, but I think that's also a healthy thing to do, to, you know, maybe you have a time when you're like, okay, I'm not so inspired with what's going on right now. And I think I know artists that are out there now, you know, making it big that has, for example, Marlon Hofstad, DJ Daddy Trance. He's a little bit of this like TikTok rave vibe, but he was saying that he also had a time when he's like, okay, I'm kind of done. Sometimes you need a rebirth, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel some of that way too. Like I'm thinking about how my own productions can be a little bit more, you know, Saturday night friendly, if you will, because the dub leaning genre and dub techno, dubby house is not really stuff that gets played Saturday night, let's call it, right? If there is like a stage at a festival to hear stuff like that, it might be a little bit more in the chill out area, you know? So I'm trying to do my own original thing and my own original slant on stuff, but also make it a bit more Saturday night friendly, for lack of a better word. But yeah, I'm probably not going to go too much over 130 beat per AM. I kind of still like stuff in the 126 to maybe 130 zone, you know, plus or down 2 or 3 BPM. I don't know. Right. That's maybe the sweet spot for me as a somewhat of an old timer. But anyhow, so yeah, I mean, that covers like a lot of the tunes in the music. There is one last one that I ended with, which is this is Ben Shaw featuring Adele Wholeness. I remember hearing this in the club and the gal's voice. I was like, is this a Whitney Houston track? How come I never heard it? She sounds like, you know, Whitney Houston potentially. I'll play a quick clip for the people you know, who watch this. Let me share screen again. Give me a sec. But yeah, so soulful and like so good. I actually did my own edit of this that I'm playing a bit here on my own, as like my own private edit that's not released and out there yet. And I slowed it down. This was a faster tune for the day. It's one of those deceiving tracks that like the BPM is around 133-ish or so. But it actually like sounds a lot slower. And yeah, this was a big tune when I was going out to Sound Factory a lot. Jonathan Peters used to play it a lot. There's a crazy clip I could maybe link to if we like in the comments, but it's Victor Calderon playing a long one of his longer sets at Crowbar that he was, you know, very well known for, his regular parties there that were probably at least quarterly, and I think he probably did a couple New Year's Day parties there. And when he plays in New York City on, you know, New Year's Day, those are awesome. He does a great job on his New Year's Day parties. But yeah, there's a clip of him playing at Crowbar probably well into Sunday evening where like a bunch of degenerates are still partying and stuff. And it's definitely that, like, you know, I remember going out, I'm like, where do all these people come from? Like, you don't go to the shopping mall and see people like this, maybe 1 in 1,000, but like here I am in this big room and like everyone's like this. And it's like so interesting. But yeah, that was New York. And it looks a little crazy, but you know, you go and people are cool and you could see that in the crowd. And it's like this one guy filming before you could probably film. He probably knew someone who let him like bring a camera in, and it was probably like a little bit camcorder-ish because we're talking probably like 08, 09 may have been the year. And yeah, you could hear Victor playing this tune. The remix by Sander Kleinenberg was actually what took off, and people liked, I think, a lot. That was probably the stronger mix of the whole thing. But yeah, that's what I finished with. And you could check out the mix on Malin's channel. That'll be on SoundCloud.
Awesome.
What's the so yeah, I'm sure that'll be posted soon. So yeah, that kind of covers the mix. It's a very like groovy, party, energy friendly mix that again is all from say the 2000 to 2010 era. So yeah.
Thank you so much for making the mix. I really loved it.
Good chat. Any want to leave anyone with what they might be able to expect? Maybe there'll be a part 2. I may come back and do like another take on something like this. Who knows? Maybe reappear in another 6 months.
Definitely.
This was fun.
Yeah, I'm also looking. I'm gonna do my next Lúcido party in Stockholm, which is my hometown, in 2 weeks. I'm still looking at New York. I don't have that big of a following in New York yet, but sure. And also talks about Miami, and Mexico City, of course. So there will definitely be stuff popping up.
Very cool. Well, until then, great chat. And yeah, I'm happy to revisit and cover another guest mix from this era because I, off to the side there, still have a bunch of my finals from those days. I always get sad when I talk to people and I know that they say that they used to DJ, but then I'm like, oh, I sold all my stuff. I'm like, oh, it's always like, to me, so sad. You had like, OG Technics maybe, or like a bunch of 12-inch records, but whatever. I'm sure that stuff goes off to someone else who'll dig and appreciate it. But yeah, all right, Malin. So catch you later. Thanks for the opportunity, and we shall be in touch. Good luck with the rest of your parties and planning and trip back to Sweden.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Bye.